Here's the number of this here payphone. It's 717-263-9928.
Dave just dialed the number of the payphone we're using, and we got a busy signal. That's unusual because this place we're calling from is served by an NX1 crossbar switch. It's Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. And as much as NX1s like to give busy signals to callers, usually when you dial your own number, you get a recording that says you've dialed a party on your own line, hang up and let the phone ring, etc. Now, when we came into Pennsylvania, the first telephone company we encountered was United Telephone, which has a large territory in south-central Pennsylvania. And United likes to use NX1 crossbar switches. That's understandable because at some point they became the owner of the North Electric Company that produces the NX1 switch. NX1 is an independent crossbar system that works quite differently from the Bell System's crossbar systems and happens to be very fun both to listen to and to phone phreak with. United not only has some NX1s in this area, but they have operators of their own. They don't rely on the Bell System's operator. There's a switch in Chambersburg that also serves as a long-distance tandem and a toll center, i.e. it has operators, for this particular sector of Pennsylvania. We entered the Chambersburg sector on our last stop in Greencastle, and we will remain within it through this current stop and even the next one in Fayetteville. Where we are right now is the Chambersburg NX1 itself. This switch, for some reason, has a very harmonious but nonetheless off-frequency dial tone. The phones we encountered in this United area were, I think, all Northern Electric Centurion payphones with black fronts. The larger central office switches, namely the Gettysburg Step and the NX1s in Chambersburg and New Oxford, operated on a semi-dial tone first basis. That is, you first pick up the phone and get a dial tone, and then you put in the dime to dial the number. Even if you have an emergency, you can't do anything without a dime in the phone. Here, I'm going to pick up the phone. You'll hear the off-frequency dial tone. I'll dial a few touch tone digits, which won't work. And then eventually I'll just stay off hook to see how the dial tone times out. So this is like most NX1s. It times out to a busy signal instead of a reorder. And it's a normal, old-type NX1 busy. I was kind of wondering after the dial tone, but no, it's normal. By the way, this is the sound of the phone being hung up at a time when someone's ear is pressed tightly to the receiver. And you have to keep the receiver tight to your ear, or else
you'd cover up really good.
See what I mean? This payphone is along U.S. Highway 11 from Greencastle to Chambersburg, and it's a very busy road. We have a telephone booth here, but it's one of those situations where the telephone booth seems to just amplify the traffic noise. At the moment, you're not hearing it, but what you do hear is a lot of electrical interference. Yeah, that high-pitched hash. I have to leave that in because if I filter it out, I'll also take out some of the details of the NX1. So this is a touch-tone phone. Without a dime in the phone, you can't use the touch-tone pad, but you can flash. On the next two calls, we're going to pick up the phone, not put in a dime, and try flashing a 3, and then we'll do the same thing trying to flash a 5. Interesting, at the end of the flashed digit without a dime, It cuts battery for a moment and then goes to a busy signal. So it has a way of knowing there's no coin in the phone, and it's not going to let us flash free local calls. Now, my first thought was that battery cutoff that we got after the first digit is the place where the central office is testing to see whether a coin is in the phone. But if that were really true, then it would always do that after the first rotary dialed digit. And on this next call, you'll see that it doesn't. We're going to pick up the phone, put in a dime, and rotary dial, actually flash, a 4. See? No battery cutoff. By the time that first digit is complete, the switch already knows there's a dime in the phone. What's not clear is exactly when it finds it out, quite possibly during the dial pulse flashes themselves. Let's go ahead and call 411.
Assistance. Directory assistance, may I help you?
It returned our dime, and that actually coincided with the operator answering the call. So the coin return cut into our hearing her say directory assistance.
Assistance.
Now once the operator left the line, let's try hit on the switch hook. That did nothing. But even a short flash like this, and welcome to the world of NX1 switching, where every call ends in a busy signal sooner or later. The only way to be safe from it is just hang up the phone and sort of walk away for about 5 seconds and then... Whew, okay. God damn it. See, anytime you don't hang up long enough, there's the busy signal. And once you've got the busy, you can get off of that pretty quickly and get a new dial tone. And what usually happens at the end of the calls we make on this particular recording is we hang up just long enough to get the system to return our coin, and then after it returns our coin, guess what it does? Right, of course. So we then have to hang up again to get a new dial tone. You'll hear that happening over and over and over again. That's just an NX1 thing. So one of the first things we tried was dialing a vacant code. It put us through to the vacant code recording, simultaneously returning our coin.
I'm sorry, we are unable to complete your call as dialed. Please check the number and dial again or ask your operator for assistance. This is a recording. 2634. I'm sorry, we are unable to complete your call as dialed.
That was the vacant code recording. Now here's a vacant number recording where there's also a coin return as we connect to it. And by the way, both the vacant code recording and the vacant number recording feature a man's voice saying "now" right before the recording text begins.
I'm sorry, the number you have reached is not in service at this time. If you need assistance, please hang up and dial your operator. This is a recording. 2634. I'm sorry, the number you have reached is not in service at this time. If you need assistance, please hang up and dial your operator. This is a recording. 2634.
Well, what do you know? Dave was able to hang up on that call and get a new dial tone without going through a busy signal. Of course, what made that possible was the fact that his dime had been returned previously in that last call. Had that not been the case, a flash of that length would have resulted in a coin return followed by... Right. So let's go on to an intra-office call. This NX1 switch has the classic NX1 ringtone. It's a tone plant that's only found in buildings that have NX1. We'll only let it ring twice because there's no supervision grace here, such that if a subscriber answers, we lose our dime. The internal pulsing that the NX1 uses to set up the route through its own network of crossbar switches is most pronounced when you're calling an actual telephone line within the office. On that last call, you can hear it took quite a while to find its way to the line. When the call is to an outgoing trunk instead of a subscriber line, the connection is made faster and there's a lot less pulsing. Calls to non-working numbers within this same office also go to an outgoing trunk, namely the recording. So on these you also get the shorter pulsing and faster overall connect time. In my years as a phone freak, I didn't know what the pulsing corresponded to, but you can always tell whether you've reached a vacant number or a working number even before the ringtone begins. A lot of NX1s ring before the recording starts up, but by the time you're hearing the ring, you already know. And that's because the shorter pulsing precedes the recording, and the longer pulsing, that means we've hit an actual working line. Here's picking up, putting in a dime, dialing a 2, and just sitting there. Well, I'm not surprised at what just happened, but I am surprised how quickly it happened. Less than 4 seconds to dial the next digit. Well now, here we are in Chambersburg, which is the center of this long-distance sector in Pennsylvania. There are a lot of tributaries that go through this long-distance tandem that are not local calls from here. So there's a lot of revenue that United gets on calls among the various tributaries of Chambersburg. In fact, Greencastle, where we last were, is a long-distance call from here. But Marion 375, which is between Greencastle and here, is local from both. On the last stop, I was having trouble finding a ringing number there, but Dave got one on the first try. And now here's a Marion Vacant 1000 group.
I'm sorry. The number you have reached is not in service at this time. If you need assistance, please hang up and call your operator. This is a recording, 375. I'm sorry. The number you have reached is not in service at this time. If you need assistance, please hang up and call your operator. This is a recording, 375.
That call had such nice rego noises that I want to run the tape back and make some comments. Rego is the term for the originating register sender that gives you the dial tone, records your digits, initiates the process of the call completing, and then outpulses. While Dave is dialing the number, you can hear another customer calling 264-671 or 67-something-1. Anyway, the crosstalk between the regos is sometimes very apparent. Dave dials the last digit, the rego somehow initiates a process whereby the call is set up through the internal network of crossbar switches. There's obviously a kind of pulsing being used internally to set up the route from our line to the Marion trunk that we're going to be using. That is what we hear while the route is being set up, and at this point the outpulsing begins immediately. It's dialing the last 4 digits of the number we're calling to Marion. Immediately after the last digit is pulsed, the rego drops out with a loud click, leaving us connected fully to the Marion trunk. A relay circuit associated with the trunk clicks in response to the last digit that was dialed, and we find ourselves already connected to the recording in progress.
I'm sorry. The number you have reached is not in service at this time.
By the way, that last editing that I did to slow it down and explain stuff is not realistic. In reality, you can't wait that long between dialing digits anyway, because if you do, let's just go on. So St. Thomas 369 is another tributary that is a local call from here. When we dial it, our Chambersburg NX1 dials the last 5 digits of the number into the trunk. It's a type of trunk that I'm not very familiar with. I'm not even sure whether it's a wire trunk that is conditioned differently from those in the Bell system, or if these trunks are some sort of low-efficiency carrier system. The independent trunks are just different. Anyway, here's 369-0000. Right before Dave dials his last digit, you can hear another customer calling 264-6776. We got a reorder on the 0 level. Let's try 369-1111 and see if we get something different.
I'm sorry, the number you have reached is not in service at this time. If you need assistance, please hang up and dial your operator. This is a recording, 369. I'm sorry, the number you have reached is not in service at this time. If you need assistance, please hang up and dial your operator. This is a recording, 369. I'm sorry.
Oh, so it does have a recording. Let's try to get a 369 ringing number. Looks like we've been left high and dry. Maybe we've hit an open sleeve or gotten a bad connector. Let's try flashing. Sometimes that will get it to ring because the line you dialed, 2258 in this case, has an open sleeve lead, and when you flash it knocks it over to 2259, which rings fine, but not this time. Unfortunately, we didn't try again, so we never did get a ring in 369 St. Thomas. But given that it has a Stromberg-Carlson sounding reorder tone, it's very unlikely that its ring was like this. Nope, it was probably more like this. There's one more tributary that's a local call from here, Fayetteville 352. It, like the other two, is either a step or a Stromberg XY switch, and when we dial it from here, the last 5 digits are dialed into the trunk. Here's a Fayetteville ringing number. On the next call, we reach a Fayetteville vacant level by dialing 352-0000. While the call is going through, I dial an extra 0 just to see if our local NX1 will send that along. Some NX1s do allow that. If you dial an extra digit, sometimes that digit will be sent. In this case, it doesn't work.
Number you have reached is not in service at this time. If you need assistance, please hang up and dial your operator. This is a recording, 352. I'm sorry, the number you have reached is not in service at this time. If you need assistance, please hang up and dial your operator. This is a recording, 352.
And now, just to make sure that you can't squeeze in extra digits in the rotary dial mode, I'm going to flash a 352 number and add an extra digit. Nope, even rotary dialing it, throwing in extra digits here doesn't do anything. Now this Chambersburg switch is also a long-distance tandem. We can hear it acting as a long-distance tandem rather directly because 555-1212, the nationwide number for directory assistance, is still set up to go through without making a record of the call. So we can just pick up this payphone and dial 1-212-555 in any 4 digits, and the call will go right out to the long-distance network. This is a phone freak's dream, by the way, because if we had a blue box, we could MF anything we wanted. The other thing we can do is that once the call goes through, if we flash our switch hook, it's actually going to send a momentary on-hook down the line all the way to New York. We'll do that a few times when the operator's on the line, and somehow we end up with continuous flashing once the operator has left the line.
Director Assistance, may I help you?
Here's doing the same thing again.
Director Assistance, can I help you?
On NX1s, sometimes if you flash just as it's starting to MF out onto a trunk, you can drop the rego and end up on the trunk without any MFs having been sent. This is extremely useful for a phone freak, and that's what I'm trying to do here. No success. I just have the feeling that if I keep trying this, I'm going to just end up with a coin return followed by a busy signal every time. So I stopped trying. Let's go on and try dialing a star. I'm going to pick up the phone, put in a dime, and dial a star on the dial tone, see what that does.
help you, please?
Operator?
Yes.
I'm sorry, that's by accident.
Okay.
Dialing a star on the dial tone seems to be the full equivalent of dialing 0. It even waited to see if we were going to dial a number before starting to go through to the TSD operator. Let's actually dial 0 and make sure it does basically the same thing. We'll also try dialing a 0 before putting a coin in, just to make sure that that doesn't work. At this point, let me just run the tape back and call your attention to something. It's a certain type of clicks that NX1s make, associated with billing long-distance calls and also 0+ dialing just in general. We hear it here after dialing 0 by itself. See, there's a little bit of it. And then, in between the rings, there's crosstalk, too. There. That series of clicks is the ticketing equipment operating. I don't know how it works, but this probably has to do with impulses being used to transmit the number you are calling and maybe the number you're calling from to the equipment that's going to make a record of a long-distance call. When you dial 0 from an NX1 and you hear that sound, even a short part of it, it means that the office you're calling from has 0+ dialing, and that service in the NX1 system is called TSD, Traffic Service Desk, which is used for collect, person-to-person, and coin calls. Here's the beginning of a coin long-distance call.
One moment, please. It's $2.05 for 3 minutes.
How much?
$2.05.
I don't seem to have that much change. I'll make the call when I get home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the problem with not being at a post-pay phone. Had this been a post-pay phone, she would have said, it'll be $2.05, but don't deposit until they answer. But semi-dial tone first means you put your money in first and then it's collected or returned. That's all we recorded from the Chambersburg NX1. Our next stop is Fayetteville. It's a Stromberg-Carlson XY office that is local to Chambersburg and of course relies on Chambersburg for its connection to the long-distance network. From Fayetteville, we were able to mess around with TSD just a little bit, thanks to the fact that you could rather easily reset the trunk that you get on 1, and then the ANI wouldn't work right. It's a haphazard series of experiments. That's next.